Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the another session of Startup Series and the IP Series. In this series, we talk about deep tech startups, IP strategy, aiming to provide practical tool and insight that can help us add another trillion in the economy and also move further. Today's discussion, turning yesterday's IP portfolio into today's income, addresses a critical opportunity many companies overlook. Did you know that more than 75% of all the patent portfolios never put in the commercial use? That means countless businesses are sitting on a valuable IP assets, sometimes even without realizing their potential. Meanwhile, the global market for intellectual property transaction has reached over 13 billion last year, proving there is a strong demand for the right ideas. If you know how to unlock their value, that's great. Actively managing and monetizing intellectual property doesn't just protect innovation, it can open new streams of revenue and growth. In fact, the research shows that companies with well managed IP portfolios are far more successful at turning their innovation into strategic financial advantages. But successful IP monetization is just about luck. It's about that process, requires strategy, patience, and expertise. Often, sometimes takes years to develop, and that's why my session today, turning yesterday's IP portfolio into today's income, couldn't be more timely. Whether you are sitting on a gold mine of unused patents or you are unsure on how to unlock the hidden value, today we are going to break down in the simple steps from building a valuable portfolio to making this tough decisions about which asset to monetize and how to divest them. And as I said, it is about planning. It sometimes takes 3 to 5 years to develop, and then also find the right marketplace and the buyer. My guests Anne Marie and Jennifer will share real world strategies, lesson learned, and insider tips on transitioning old innovation into real tangible returns. I am Govind Kedia. If you are coming here for the first time, and this is not an AI avatar who is speaking, I run Arctic Invent, part of Basque Limited as well. We help companies with their IP portfolios, building their entire portfolio, and we've worked with a lot of more than 1,000 plus companies, and we have helped them have massive values on their products and technologies. But let me first introduce Anne Marie, who I have known more than a decade and have been fortunate to work with her. Anne Marie, welcome. And Anne Marie is patent director at Guru Logic and a qualified Finnish patent attorney holding doctorate in IP laws. She brings over 14 years and more than that in IP experience from Nokia, where she managed global legal issues and innovation invention programs. At Guru Logic, she built, manages the extensive patent portfolio, protecting unique security and other technologies. Uh, Thank you, Anne Marie. And I know I may have missed a lot of your introductions, and I believe the best introduction can only be done by ourselves. So, would be great if you can share a bit more about you, and then we can have Jennifer on the stage as well.
Thank you, Govind, for introduction and for invitation. I do have quite diverse working experience in the IPR field, uh, covering the whole patenting process from invention report handling to filing and prosecution patent applications to granted patents and evaluating them for determining inventor awards and in the context of IP monetization. And during the last years at Nokia, I was global responsible for legal issues related to employee inventions. And in a global company with cross-border R&D, there were sometimes challenging situations when there were co-inventors having contributed to the invention from different jurisdictions, meaning that different laws to them applied. So when I left Nokia in 2012, I was fully planned to fully concentrate on my doctoral dissertation deriving from these real life challenges. But when one door closes, another opens, and they called me from here, Guru Logic, and asked whether I would be interested to build a patent portfolio for their innovative next generation codec. And of course, I was on a condition that I was able to start part time because I really, really wanted to also wrap up my dissertation. So now, after almost 13 years, I'm still here. The dissertation has been wrapped up. So has the codec development that continued from 7 to 8 years, resulting to this extensive coding and compression patent portfolio, which has now become legacy to us. And during recent years, I've been trying to find alternative ways to monetize it with some success, the most recent of which you will be hearing today in this
Yeah.
webinar.
Thanks. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Really pleasure to have you, and also congratulations on completing your dissertation as well. Now, let me also welcome Jennifer Birdman from SimIP. She brings more than 20 years of global impact in intellectual property and business leadership. Jennifer is managing director at Sword Gardner, I hope I'm pronouncing correct, investment management, and co-chair at LESI Life Sciences Committee. She served as Chief Intellectual Property and Deputy General Counsel at two biotech startups, Value Health and Polarity. And Jennifer's expertise spans fintech to health tech. Given her unique cross-industry perspective, she's known for driving business transformation with technology, leading high-performance and cross-functional teams. May I request Jennifer to also, share a bit more about your journey? And I'm sure I may have missed a lot of aspects of your journey in the IP as well. So would love to hear as well.
Thank you so much, Govind. That was a lovely introduction. Makes me sound so fancy. I mean, you really summed it up. I've been in the business for probably 26 years now. Started doing patent prosecution at a law firm, then transitioned as an attorney into litigation, where I helped companies monetize their IP as outside counsel. I then went in-house for a while to learn the business side. And now I try to combine all of that information and knowledge and experience to help companies like GuruLogic to successfully monetize IP that they have spent quite a bit of time, money, and effort creating. As Anne-Marie was just saying, 13 years is really impressive.
Yeah, great to have you. And before we begin our conversation, I also want to remind my lovely audience who are here to take advantage of this opportunity. You can post the questions in the chat box. I will be more than happy to cover during our conversation as well. And let's dive in. I think, like, my first question is, from your experience, there's a lot of conversation around IP monetization. And what is the ground reality of IP monetization today? Many companies have patents, but few very successfully convert them into revenue streams. So maybe Jennifer, you want to take from a business angle first. What's your view on the ground realities in the area?
Sure. I think on the ground reality is that a lot of companies don't see patent assets as monetizable assets. Frequently, the IP department is separated from the business teams and really only interacts when there's an innovation. Everybody knows when you've invented something, oh, it's time to call the patent attorneys and get them to file the patents. And then what happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get a whole portfolio of issued patents. You're constantly spending money, real money, to file around the world, to prosecute. And then they often sit on the shelf. Mm-hmm. Or, they're not really thought of again until annually when everyone's reviewing the budget and they're like, oh, look how much that's costing the business to maintain all of those patents. So when I was in-house, I was constantly trying to get management to understand that when you're a business and you're looking to collaborate with others in the industry, the main focus of those agreements is going to be the patents and the intellectual property. If you're looking to be acquired by a company, the main focus is going to be on your intellectual property. And then if you're not using the intellectual property, you don't have to just abandon it. If it's good technology, there is somebody who will be using it. And so there are ways to monetize.
Sure. No, great. I think very, very interesting perspective from a very business angle, Jennifer. Thank you for bringing that up. Anne-Marie, what's your view? I'm not only with GuruLogic, of course.
Yeah.
But in general, what would be your view on this?
Jennifer nailed it down. So I think IP monetization first of all, is a long-term project for a company. So obviously it all starts from being innovative and building a patent portfolio, but you have to think of how you will in the end monetize your patents already in the prosecution phase, when you have possibilities to still affect the claim scope and direct the claims to desired direction. But then it may happen that your goals change along the way after the patents have been granted, and that's exactly what happened to GuruLogic, where for several reasons business scope changed. So then we needed to rethink the use of our extensive patent portfolio, and just like Jennifer said, you don't immediately trim them. We don't need these patents anymore. You need to try to find alternative use for them. And the fact that you don't anymore yourself develop the patented technologies doesn't mean that there couldn't be value in your patents. And I think we have good examples in mobile phone business about this.
Yeah. No,
If I could just add, like, Anne-Marie, the possibility to do that is because of your strong work. And you said it perfectly. You need to be thinking about claim scope from the very beginning. And so having a really good patent team available to do that, that's not completely myopically focused on what the business is doing, but looking broader at the industry and where it's headed.
Yeah.
No, I think, Jennifer, I will also add probably a bit of a deviation also, is that you talked about quality, right? And from a very business perspective, how do you look at quality of IP? Because what we have seen, at least in India or economies where there is a lot of push in building IPs now, and sometimes quality is compromised, or it's overlooked and it's not defined. What is quality? From your lens, from a very business lens, how do you see quality in of IP from that perspective?
It's interesting. Quality is in the eye of the beholder, and really depends on where a company is on its trajectory. Certainly in the beginning of a company's life, there is a focus on quantity. And when I was in-house, that was incredibly frustrating, because those of us in patents prosecution understand that you can have quantity rather quickly without quality, right? You can file continuations, you can divide up your claims into multiple applications so that when asked, how many patents do you have, the number is artificially inflated.
Sure.
And that is a bit important when you're seeking funding and you're in your early stages of looking for traction. That doesn't mean you have to forego quality. And certainly at the sort of more robust stage, when we look at quality, that is, how are the claim scopes reading on not just your product, but competitive products? Did you look towards the industry writ large and file broadly? And are those claims valid? Will they stand up? Have you looked at prior art? We're always looking at both, monetizable aspects of it, which, really means, do the claims cover what a third party is or may be doing in the future? And will they stand up in court? Are they valid patents? And so you need both, but understand that in the beginning, there is a push for quantity, but I don't think you have to really give up quality in the same moment.
Sure. That's fascinating, Jennifer. Thank you for adding that. Now let's talk about, and taking a little bit a step before that, and let's talk about building a valuable patent portfolio from the beginning. What are some of the strategic consideration companies should keep in mind in the R&D and the patenting process if they
I can
want to
take that.
maximize
Yeah.
the future monetization opportunities? Anne-Marie, maybe you can add, because you've set up the entire process. So would love to hear.
So I think this more or less also repeats Jennifer's comments, but I mean, of course, it depends what the company wants to achieve with patents. If whether the company only wants to protect their own R&D investments and to ensure their freedom of act, or whether they want to get as much standard essential patents as possible. So obviously, I, having worked both in public company at telecommunications and in this small family-owned technology company, I've seen them both. But what is common for both companies is that you have to think broadly. You have to think, when drafting the patent claims and prosecuting them towards the grant, you can't just think of your own implementation. You have to think beyond. You have to think the possible design around options, and also you have to foresee the future. So you can't restrict the claim scope to current technologies, but you have to think how this could be done in future. So you have to create what I've said, written here to me, that you have to create resilient patents that stand time.
No, I think thanks, Anne-Marie, for adding that. And I think we have also been fortunate to, of course, be part of that as Basque and Arctic, and that was also great to learn that process and see from the ground. So thank you for that opportunity. But now you are both involved in this IP transaction. Could you walk us through how this deal came about? Maybe something that you can share in public. Uh, uh, and what is it that people or companies who are sitting on IP portfolios can learn from? Uh, uh, so that would be very interesting, insight that if you can both of you can add on this topic.
I think it was just it was about finding a good match. So
Mhm.
I think I read from IP Frey newsletter that Eric Spangerberg is back in IP monetization business, and I decided to contact him, and he was at Miami time zone, and he responded to me in 1 hour and 1 minute and said that they are interested, and he had already had time to review our portfolio. So that was really prompt and efficient, and things progressed quite fast after that. So
Yeah.
perhaps
Yeah.
Jennifer can tell the buyer's view, but from the seller's point of view, I think after all these years with some deals in the past, this was definitely the most efficient one.
Great. But I do want to add, Anne-Marie, that while you said about 1 hour, 1 minute, but I'm sure there must be other countless emails which have gone in other places. We only
Yeah.
look at the successful ones. I would also want to know a bit more, if you can share, like, was it, I'm sure it was not the first email that you might have sent, right? So what I want to build for sellers here is, it's also about selling, and then sales is a long process sometimes, right? That you have to keep
Yes.
your patience also, and persistence also. So would you like to add some bit of it also somewhere?
Yeah, in general, I mean, as I said, IP monetization is a long-term project, and you can't expect to that if you have patents for sale, that anyone just is willing to buy them. So you have to do your homework. You have to find the interested parties. You have to get them to want your patents. You need to have right contacts, right email addresses. Sometimes it's a nightmare to figure some, Asian companies' emails, but
Yeah.
this was straightforward.
Yeah, great. I think, Jennifer, I would love to know your secret about 1 hour, 1 minute telling, which portfolio to acquire, but would love to know your perspective on this topic. How do you really see that,
Sure. I,
process?
I can't promise 1 hour, 1 minute for everyone.
For sure, for sure, for sure.
But Anne-Marie came to us with a package. She had done the work ahead of time, so it made it very easy for us to evaluate. She knew her portfolio. She knew the right places to look for monetizable highlights to show us really right off the bat. Not everybody has that, and it's not always necessary, but certainly that contributed to the 1 hour, 1 minute, no doubt. We're looking for partnerships. Anne-Marie is a great partner in this. She didn't send that email and then disappear.
Yeah.
She's been in it with us in the process. We do a full evaluation of the portfolio, that we're looking at what the monetizing aspects would be of it. Did she look into the future being now, when she was drafting these claims with Basque? Where
Sure.
were the pieces that really all
Mm.
came together to make this an incredible portfolio for us to work together on? And now we're partners in it.
Sure.
That makes a big difference too. We get a lot of emails, and you're right, not all of them are answered that quickly. Some of them require me and my team to dig. And the more we have to dig, the longer
Yeah.
it's going to take for us to evaluate. And we don't take everything we see. Different firms will probably take different things because they're looking for different aspects. It doesn't mean your patents aren't good. It's just that we're looking for a particular fit, and we know it when we see it.
Yeah, yeah. It's also like because I also talk about startup. It's also like investing in a right asset class, right? And I'm sure that's how you may look at from that angle, that how much it is aligned with the thesis as an investor you have. And I think one small point I want to ask you, Jennifer, especially on the portfolio. I think one of the challenges that we also face, that sometimes companies stop at like one or two patents. Do you also see that even one or two patents is a good way, or is it has to be a portfolio? It has to be something that come as a package, or even one patent can be a package. Is it? Can you compare this quantity quality also? I would love to know your perspective on that.
Sure. So one patent could be a package, but there's more risk there, because if that one patent isn't successful, then the portfolio is not successful. The more robust claim sets you have, the different countries, we prefer to see Europe and US being prosecuted, not just US, although we've taken just US. But it does change the equation a bit on how monetizable is it. We also love to see when you've got US and Europe and open applications, so that the claim drafting is continuing. You're still able to mine your specification for good claims. You're able to adjust. When you filed the patent is
Sure.
one moment in time. When you get the grant is another moment in time. But if you've got another application pending, then we can look to it as a team, and we really are a team at that point, to see where to go next on this. And so we take a lot of portfolios that have open prosecution, and we take that cost off of our partner, right? We're now going to pay for the ongoing prosecution and maintenance costs of those patents, but we'll still work together because the original owner, Anne-Marie, is the expert, right? We need that expertise and that assistance in the technology.
Oh, great. No, thanks, Jennifer. And I think one of the core messages that I kind of gathered from here so far is quality is important, building a portfolio is important, and also making sure that it is a balance of quality versus quantity. And of course, finding a right partner is important in that sense. Now, in that conversation, one thing which is asked is timing. Many companies struggle with timing. Sometimes their patents may be ahead of time. Maybe they are not in the right state of time. Is there any way or any metric, any framework? How do you know when it's the right time to monetize your IP as IP versus continue holding it and hoping that it will increase its value? Few factors that you can think of which makes decision process easier, or sometimes easier, or maybe at least manageable. So maybe Anne-Marie, you want to add on this?
Yes. For us, GuruLogic, the turning point was really when our business focus changed. So at that time, when the codec development stopped, quite conveniently, I had got my dissertation wrapped up. So I got all the bandwidth to look into our portfolio from outside of the box, so to say. So when I started to look into our portfolio that was designed for our proprietary codec, I found out that, in fact, even if our ambitious vision was always to develop a proprietary codec, we were not that different from what others were doing. But in many aspects, we were just earlier. So that's where it then started.
Yeah. So Jennifer, from your perspective, from a buyer's perspective, how do you see timing of these IP? How do you know it's yesterday's is actually has a tomorrow? The portfolio that was sitting there. So how do you look at that?
Well, it certainly always helps when the portfolio is shown to us and someone can say, and look at the industry and look at how others are using it and look at my patent claims, right? Mm-hmm. That's a moment. Some come to us earlier and they think it's headed in that direction. And that's a conversation to be had on value, right? What is it worth to the company today versus holding on to it, paying your maintenance fee costs, like keeping it all alive to wait for tomorrow? And we see companies at all different stages. The key, Emery said it, right, was to be early, like to have started your prosecution early, to have filed your patents early so that you've got that really good priority date. Yeah. That's what we're really looking for. If we can work with that priority date, and the industry is either there now or imminently going there, then there's a conversation to be had about monetization.
Sure. No, I think that's very important. So I think two lessons that I again hear from you is, one is, of course, the right time could be when the business shift is happening, and also if you are innovator and have a first mover advantage from a buyer's perspective, that how good the portfolio in terms of vintage, in terms of how early it was and seminal it is for that technology, right? So I think very, very insightful in that sense, because that kind of gives us also some cues that if people who are listening or maybe listening it later, is that if we can establish that as a framework also when they're kind of putting it up for the sale, that hey, it is actually first mover or early, and mapping on, like you said, Jennifer, thank you for adding that how it is going to shape the industry as well. So that is going to be very, very useful. Thank you for sharing that. Now,
I would just also flag, it doesn't have to be a moment where they're divesting because the company is changing. We work with a lot of companies who continue to work on the technology, but for whatever reason, it makes more financial sense for them to have a company like SIM monetize the patents while the business continues to work on the actual product. And we have relationships where we license the patents right back to the original owner so that they can continue to do that while we take on the effort of monetization.
Sure. I think it also adds to a point that what we've seen, and that's again what my observation has been, that if you look at fairly large successful technology companies, they have eventually have licensed out their technology to have more proliferation. And proliferation basically earns more revenue. Sometimes holding it back and keeping it too close in the closet, which we say, sometimes maybe not the great strategy. So thank you for bringing that up, because that also kind of sometimes IP departments are looked at like a cost center. I think this is a very, very important element to actually, that IP legal heads or IP heads can also think, okay, can we actually make some massive amount of money, or at least cover our costs? I mean, worst case scenario, right? So I think that would be a great insight, right? That thanks for that. And now let's burst some of these myths on IP monetization. So would love to know. I'm sure it's a very there must be a lot of common misconceptions that companies have about the value or the process of selling their patents. So maybe Jennifer, you want to add on to, from a seller's perspective, what are some of those common myths and misconceptions people have when they come to you and they want to offer you to buy something?
I don't know, maybe Anne-Marie should start this one from the company perspective. I hear all sorts of strange things that come to us, and I mean, the obvious one is that we're trolls. I don't think I look like a troll. I don't think we act like trolls. I think we're really good partners. But Anne-Marie, what did you hear about us or about the process before we engaged?
I don't think I've heard anything bad from you, but if we are talking about common myths in general related to IP monetization, I think I already mentioned that some companies may have misunderstanding that if they have patents, they have value, or if they have patents for sale, then anyone can buy them. But it's really, I mean, as in all sales, you have to get the customer to need your product. It's the same with patent sales. You have to get the counterparty to understand that it would be beneficial for them to buy or license your patent. And of course, one myth that I have encountered a lot, which is common both among patent owners and inventors, is that they think that their invention is worth millions. So without even knowing the claim scope or what it's protecting. So if it's an invention that somehow involves Bluetooth, they might think that they have invented Bluetooth. So there are a lot of myths that patents as such would have some value, but it really boils down to what the patent has eaten, so to say.
Yeah. But Jennifer, I think while it's a very it's a long debate and topic, but you picked up this word, troll or non-practicing entity. There has been a lot of misconceptions around this term or this name or this kind of licensing of IPs. If you can take if you have to explain the model or explain this in a very short manner for the benefit of people who don't really know these things, if you can explain what is it and how important it is, actually, at least I know from the taking these patents and putting it in use is a great service, I believe, because you are basically using innovation of something and putting in real world. So I believe it's a very, very important word. But maybe if you can add some bit, I'm sure you would have a better explanation than me, but I would love to hear your views on that.
Well, my take on it is and has always been that patents are assets for these companies, right? When you have an invention and you put it in a patent, yes, you get like a shiny, or at least you used to get a shiny ribbon copy. We put it on the wall for all the inventors at the company, and that's very, very nice. And I would hear companies say, well, it's a defensive act, right? It's so that we can practice our own invention and make our product. And actually, that's not what patents are for.
Yeah.
Patents are actually a negative, right? And they allow you to prevent others from making, using, or selling or offering for sale the claims, right? The claims scope. And so they're a tool to be used, an asset to be used. There's nothing in patent jurisdiction that says you must practice what you have put into this patent application or granted patent. There's nothing that says you must do this. And there's nothing that says you can't sell it to somebody who can make money using your patent. And when we work with patent owners, we really love to share in the monetization so that we can help companies have that revenue stream. Exactly what you were saying. Many companies, the law team is a cost center, and it doesn't have the bandwidth to do what we do in the monetization space, but they should certainly become a revenue generator for the company. And so the idea that got baked in about trolls and non-practicing entities somehow having lesser right to assert these patents is a complete myth, and one propagated by companies that enjoyed infringing these patents without ramification.
Yeah, no, I think thank you for adding that. I think that perfectly answered and brought the essence out of misconception which I had originally planned to bring out in this conversation. But thank you for sharing that. Now, not all the patents are created equal, right? And sometimes it's also dead weight, right? So what my question is to both of you is, how can companies realistically assess which part of their portfolio have some monetization potential, or some are just dead weight? This, the boat has sailed, and it's better to drop it rather than trying for it. So if you can give some framework, something around which can help patent owners in kind of assessing their entire value of their portfolio or manage it well, if you can give some insights on that, would be useful.
I can start. Well, I think it all boils down to efficient IP management. So you have to assess and reassess your portfolio from your own business point of view, from what market's going to point of view, and of course, in prosecution, sometimes if the scope of protection narrows too much, you have to consider whether it's any more feasible to maintain a patent where the scope becomes too narrow. So, and also this, I mean, it's also efficient IP management that you can let go of some of your patents. I think you, Govind, used the title "Don't keep patents in your closet." I think
Yeah.
I wrote about it in LinkedIn at some
Yeah.
point, and I think it's the same kind of process. You have in
Mm.
your garderobe, you have a lot of clothes that don't fit you anymore, that or they are out of fashion. So similarly, you have to go through your patent portfolio regularly and think whether there are those that doesn't fit your business anymore, or if they are out of fashion. And with patents, you have to remember that there aren't any vintage with patents, because patent is expired in 20 years, so you can't just wait for them to come fashionable again. So you don't just file and get granted patents and then forget the portfolio, but you have to manage it.
Yeah, sure. And Jennifer, when do you tell your, potential, or maybe in your own acquisitions, or maybe some sellers coming to you, you as a buyer tell them it's better to let it lapse? What would be, what is your metric? How do you say that?
Well, when I was in-house, my favorite activity would be to get out of the legal closet
Yeah.
and walk, to the R&D lab and
Yeah.
sit and talk with the scientists about the technology,
Yeah.
and refresh everybody's recollection, including my own, of why did we file this in the first place? Why did we get excited about the innovation? And is anybody else excited about that
Yeah.
innovation? Who else has been in this space? Who are the competitors? Who are the follow-ons? Get a better understanding of the technology so that you can understand whether it's something that you should abandon, or whether it's kind of like consignment, right? Put that piece of clothing up to see who's still dressing in the vintage way before it
Yeah.
gets too old.
Yeah.
To use the analogy, when companies come to us at SIM, right, there is a piece of that. So if it's a large portfolio, we take a look and we find what we think are the top 10 or 20 that like are really shining stars. The others might come along with it, depends on what countries. And then we do pruning as well. Right? We do the exact same exercise of looking at how much does it cost to maintain the portfolio year
Yeah.
after year? Where are the areas, now that we have some ability to look in hindsight, like where are the areas, the countries, the regions where the technology is being used, produced, made, versus not? And that's the best place to start pruning. But I would say to any company, make your buckets or your bags of clothing, right?
Yeah.
And then have a conversation with SIM or another company to actually look at the industry and say, are these claims broad enough maybe that you've missed something that's out there? And honestly, it's 2025. There are a lot of AI
Yeah.
systems out there that are getting better and better every day at
Yeah.
taking a claim set and looking to see who's practicing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And just to add on this, in my early career, and we were doing this analysis for, large enough portfolios where there were thousands of patents, and we were working with a lot of IP councils, and we were saying the same. I mean, it's 15 years back that, hey, why don't you abandon this? And then they say that we typically, the process is that we go to product team and the innovator who has done it, and as humans, all my babies are beautiful, so I can't let them lapse, and then that kind of keeps on adding on the weight and dead weight and all those things, and it's very hard to let go. It's a human's emotion kicks in, and and that was one lesson that I always remember, that
Everybody's babies are beautiful, and I try to be sensitive when companies come to us with a whole host of the babies.
yeah.
Right. And I like to talk to the inventors and hear the story. And
Yeah.
hopefully I can help provide a third voice in that room about,
Yeah.
the value of the children. And maybe it helps to have that separation if the company is selling these assets to
Mm.
SIM for monetization, that then
Mm.
at least the legal team in-house doesn't get blamed for getting the money of the shiny, perfect children.
Sure. No, I think the lesson is, I think what I learned from this conversation also is that it's important to listen and hear from outside than only looking inside. I think having an outside in view of things and making a hard choices and cutting the law sometimes, so to say, is important in management of portfolio. That's what I learned from this conversation. But thank you, Jennifer and Anne-Marie. Now, I think what I would also want to build on is, if you can, both of you, because you have just, if you can talk about the transaction process itself, not between Guru Logic or SIM or otherwise. I think what I'm trying to understand, that from a seller's perspective, what process looks like. Of course, once you make, let's say, offer to sale, there is interest. Is it like a normal any conversation in a transaction, or there's anything special about IP transaction? So maybe if you can share some bit of larger steps which happens between IP sale, that could really help at least user or listeners to understand. Okay, it is something that normally happens in a process. So maybe Anne Marie or Jennifer, you can add on to this.
Right, you said that this doesn't need to be specific to this SIM IP transaction, but I would like to still emphasize that this IP transaction went very smoothly, and SIM IP they were very flexible in redefining the terms per my request. So in a sense, IP transaction is a contractual negotiation. Once you have made the decisions have been made to sell and buy. So it's really about negotiating a contract and the terms, which obviously are in this case confidential. But I don't know whether you asked it, but what surprised me in the transaction process was that many patent offices still require those wet signed assignment documents in double or triple hard copies. So I mean, during this time of electronic signing and remote working, I can imagine how difficult it has been for SIM-IP to get those signatures if everyone are working in different cities. So why can't, I mean, it's a little bit old fashioned to send those hard copies throughout the world. So that's part of the transaction process also. I mean, it's important to record the assignments to patent offices.
Yeah. Jennifer, your view on, you must have done so many transactions, so would love to know, maybe some story, something that you can share as a fair bit of warning and also a bit of expectation. I think Anne Marie added a very important point. Be ready for a lot of paperwork, right? So I think
Right.
that's the lesson. But other than that, if you can share some bit of, your insights on this topic, would be really useful.
Sure. It is a typical transaction in the sense that it's contractual and And most IP teams are familiar with licensing agreements and sales of patents and then the assignments. And so there is that aspect. I think what takes us the most time is that after our assessment and we value the patents, having the conversation with the original patent owner about what kind of transaction they want. There are some that come to us and just want to sell the patents flat free up front, don't ever want to hear from you again. That's a little bit strange to me because precious babies, but that does happen. And then there are others who understand the value is often in the monetizing moment. So we call it the back end, right? And they want to share in that with us. And so that's just a negotiation of numbers. And once we're beyond that moment of numbers, it is just a lot of paperwork. I think the other moment that folks don't understand oftentimes is how many times we review the list of patents. The bigger the portfolio, the more difficult it is, even in this day with all of the docketing systems and patent offices that have everything online, trying not to miss an application that maybe went abandoned or the provisional, making sure that we have the entire chain that occurred throughout the years in prosecution. It takes a moment and we fly spec it, we're very detail oriented in that. So even after the documentation is ready, there's a lot of paperwork and back and forth to get it done.
Sure. And you touched upon very, very interesting topic. And probably in the process question, I want to take it. Maybe if you have to say, how long does it take? And it's my personal question. I'm very curious about how do you really discover the value of a portfolio? And then it's kind of always a back and forth because it's sellers are presuming it's of here and buyer is here. Is it like a typical negotiation which happens, or there is some sense to this madness? Like, is there some studies which happens, or do you do some data kind of backing at both the ends? If you can give a bit of a hint or sense on how these things happen, it will be really useful. And I'm very curious to know that.
Absolutely. I think that we are particularly transparent here at SIM with the patent owner. So as we go through our process of evaluation on validity and infringement, we keep the owner informed and we share the information so that they know. There should be no surprise when we start talking about the money. There should be no surprise about why. And again, we love to share on the back end. So it's not predatory. I'm not trying to convince Anne-Marie that her patents are worthless, but give them to me anyway. And then I'm going to make all the money after the fact, after I take them from her. Like, that's not we're looking for partnerships here. Right. I didn't invent these patents. I want to have a relationship, if possible, with the inventors. I want them to be helping us through consulting agreements with the SPVs that we put these patents into. And so we try to be incredibly transparent. And I think that even though most of us at SIM are lawyers or formerly lawyers, we don't have the same veil of, I can't tell you because this is a negotiation or this is privileged, or, we maintain privilege, of course, but we really do try to have a collaborative discussion about this.
Sure. No, that's really useful to know. And I think it's a great way to also generate value out of IP. And the process you mentioned, it's a very, very, great process. And I think as a misconception, what I always hear from and what I've also observed is a lot of deals or a lot of conversation does not go through just because there's no transparency. The seller is not sure why they're putting this value, and the buyer is not sure why they're saying it's worthless. And that's great if you found that kind of way of working. I think that's really going to add a lot of value in the innovation ecosystem. So congratulations.
I hope so. That's our goal. And truly, if we can't come to an agreement with a seller, I still want them to have all the information so that they can be, in a better position than when they called us, and that they can go to perhaps another buyer and already have that information with them. So I want to be helpful. I went to 2 startups before this because I love the building of companies and the innovation. So we're in it to be partners and to be helpful. And so nobody should leave being mad. I mean, it might be unfortunate that we couldn't come to an agreement or we didn't see eye to eye on the value, but at least you've got more information for your next conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you can date. It's okay not to get married in the end. It's fine, right? I think that's a better way to, on that.
Absolutely, and it's hard to break up, right? So the sooner you break up, the better. So we try to be very upfront early on before we've all invested the time. And we do try to move pretty quickly. So, 30, 60 days, we're there. So we're not
1 hour, 1 minute.
Or 1 hour.
I think that's such a word record.
Yeah.
But in general, Jennifer, maybe because you've done so many transactions, I think, sorry, I'm building this question, but it's very, very interesting. How long does it take, right from, let's say, 1 hour, 1 minute conversation, like email reply, to the end? What's a typical, I'm not asking for this deal, in general, what's your sense? Is it few months, a year? I mean, what we are looking at in terms of time?
We try to move very quickly. So we'd like to have a go, no-go decision within 30 days.
Oh, wow.
We know if we're going to be able to work together. That doesn't mean all the documentation's done. Certainly by 60 days, 2 months in, like, we should be there. So some take longer because of the size of the portfolio or the complexity of the technology, or this very open back and forth where we've done a study and I want to talk to you about the prior art. I want to really understand. We go deep because I litigated, for almost 20 years as outside counsel. I want to know what our arguments are going to be so that when we do have the agreements finalized, we can hit the ground running. Right? Sure. We can start our campaign right away. We can start entertaining calls from third parties who want a license because they've been watching as well.
Sure. So on this, I think we are running a bit out of time, and it's so interesting. I wish I could continue, but few last questions. One is, very quickly, if you can give some framework, sale versus licensing, because it's also, sometimes we have this conversation with innovators. No, I don't want to sell. I just want to license. I understand that they can always take a license back from after sales, but what should be the framework? Is it some thumb rule, something that you both can share from a perspective of buyer and seller both? When to say sale or when to say I'll only license? Maybe Anne-Marie, you can, if you want to.
I think this is more Jennifer's.
Yeah. Okay.
Jennifer's cup of tea, I think.
Yeah. So we prefer sale for a number of reasons, and we probably don't have time to get into all of it.
Yeah.
On the licensing side and the monetization, right now there's a lot of legal drama and some legislation being drafted about litigation funding. And so I think that from our perspective, we have no problem with anybody and everybody knowing that we're working with the company on the monetization side. We're happy to be advisors, but we're going to have to litigate here, we would prefer to be the owner of the patents and allow the company, the seller, to have some breathing room there. Litigation's not fun for any company. The reason I went in-house is because as an outside counsel litigator, I always wanted to work more with the companies, and they never wanted to see me after we won. I'd be like, we just won a lot of money. What are we doing tomorrow? And they're like, we don't want to talk to you again. Like, this was awful. Litigation's really hard. Nobody likes all of this. And so we like to, have it in our purview and in our ownership so we can handle that. The licensing and litigation funding is getting more complicated unnecessarily, right? And I think it's
Mm.
because of a lot of the myths that
Yeah.
we were raising earlier, that there's predatory litigation funding, and perhaps there is, but that's not us. So we'll do it, but it takes a lot more effort and paperwork, and we have more concerns right now from a legislative perspective, particularly in the US.
Sure. Great. Thanks, Jennifer. I think we are just 5 minutes away, and if there are any questions, I'll take it. There are a lot live audience also, but otherwise, I think uh, as a wrap up, and maybe we can spend just to summarize this conversation. What are the three most crucial piece of advice you would give to companies who are sitting on potentially valuable IP but unsure how to proceed? Maybe Anne-Marie, you can come from a very in-house, and also Anne-Marie from Guru Logic's perspective, and then Jennifer, you can add on from a different perspective. So maybe Anne-Marie, you can kind of summarize, and three pieces of advice would you give to people?
Yes, I would pick these. Think before you trim. So think before you abandon that Brazilian patent because your management asks you to cut off your costs, whether there could be some hidden value in that patent member. And do your homework. So don't expect that anyone just wants to buy your patents without you having shown them that they really need to have them. And think big and far. So think when drafting the claim scope, think beyond your own implementation and foresee the future. So those technologies that are not yet there.
Sure. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Jennifer, your three advice, or three or four could be, but yeah, some advice that as a summary of our conversation.
Yeah, start thinking about these assets as assets to be monetized, right? 2, think of your department as revenue generating, not a cost center.
Yeah.
And then reach out and have the conversation. Don't be afraid to say, you can't afford or need to have help with the monetization of these assets. There are resources out there, and the innovation deserves to be monetized. Your company deserves that revenue stream.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. I think we are just 3 minutes away, and few comments from Akhil and Smriti on appreciating the conversation. Thank you, and I'm sure there are many other listeners who are on that have not posted, but I'm sure we will also post a lot of small content pieces of this conversation. But thank you, Anne-Marie and Jennifer. We are wrapping up on time, just before. And thank you for sharing your invaluable insights for us today, and your real world experience with this entire transaction, and otherwise also, I'm sure, have added a lot of practical wisdom in navigating the whole complex world of IP monetization. And of course, as I said, it's not an AI avatar who is talking. So thank you for taking time, and thank you all the audience to be here. And I look forward to have such more great sessions. But thank you so much again, Anne-Marie and Jennifer.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.